What's up everyone? A lot of you have said that you are experiencing hip pain and you're looking for some solutions to fix it. You might get a pinch down at the bottom of the squat in your hip flexor, or you might just feel a general uncomfortable pain when you're doing sumo deadlifts or just a wider stance squat. So I've brought in a guest. His name is Shane Dowd. His brand is Got Rom, and he's gonna give you an in-depth look at hip pain and hip impingement and some possible solutions that will help you fix your problem. So without further ado, take it away, Shane.
Hey, it's Shane from GotRom.com. This video is about the ultimate guide to hip impingement. Hip impingement is something that a lot of athletes are experiencing more and more in recent years. And how it usually shows up if you're in the gym is you may be squatting, lifting weights, and one day or slowly it starts to come on that you start getting a pain in the front of the hip, or sometimes in the groin, or sometimes it doesn't even manifest in the hip. It manifests on one side of your low back, but very often it's somewhere in the groin or in the hip. And you could do a little research, you look online and you find, oh, I might have FAI, femoral acetabular impingement, or more commonly called hip impingement. So you might find that your bones might be abnormally shaped, and that's a whole nother discussion for another day. But what you should know is that there are ways to move better, there's ways of doing massage in and around your muscles, and there's ways of stretching those muscles that make the hip impingement better, either completely or at least improve it a lot. So I want to take you through some of what I think are the best exercises for hip impingement and give you kind of like the ultimate guide, like a quick start guide for what to do about that. So we're going to start with tissue work. You can use a barbell that you might find in the gym and very simply lay it across your lap. We're going to work on the attachment point of your muscles. Anything that is closely in and around the hip can really affect its range of motion and the pain that's going on there. So we're going to work as close to the hip joint as we can for maximum benefit. So what you're going to do is lay the barbell across with a little bit of space up here, sit tall, and start dropping your knee in and out, looking for a dense patch of tissue right here. When you find it, try rolling the bar forward, rolling it back, scrubbing it. I like to pin the bar down and kind of scrub, subtly changing my knee position to get just the right angle, or pin it down and kind of shake my body and the bar. This can be pretty intense for some people, so breathe and relax. Once you've kind of worked on this for a while, what you're going to want to do is move on to the next exercise. And I should note that you want to test kind of how your hip is before you start doing all of these exercises. How you can test it is just squatting. Just see what your squat feels like and kind of wiggle around and stretch and push and pry and just see what might be restricted. Or an even simpler test is to lay on the ground and just move your hip around. Move it to the side, let it fall out to the side, compare it to the other side. Just check out every possible range of motion laying on your back here and just see if there's a side-to-side difference. So once you've done that test, do the barbell. Next, we're going to move from the top of the quads into the groin, the adductor muscles. And there's two ways that I like to do that. One is with a kettlebell. And what you can do is basically lay next to the kettlebell like you're spooning, put your leg up over top of it right on those adductor attachment points, and let that kind of sink into the adductor attachment point muscles. Then let your knee drop up and down, hunt around a little bit, and if you notice, I'm resting on my shoulder and I'm holding the kettlebell handle so I can maneuver it around a little bit. So I'm fully relaxed on the kettlebell handle, letting all of my weight sink down onto it. Breathe, relax. Then start making some little pelvic adjustments. So I'm arching my back, rounding my back, wiggling around. You can also put this foot behind this knee. There's really no wrong way to do it. You just want to explore what allows you to get access to the junkiest, ugliest, densest tissue, and then slowly kind of massage it out, remembering to breathe and become dead weight all along. So you're doing that. Once you've done that for 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes, however long you need, Slowly come out of that. We're going to do a double whammy on the adductors because I find that the adductors really contribute a lot to hip impingement and restricted hip range of motion. The next variation that you can do is to get yourself a plyo box, pull it over to you, and either use a softball or a lacrosse ball. And we call this the dog peeing on a fire hydrant exercise because that's exactly what it looks like. So what you're going to do, put the ball right on the edge of the box, put your knee right on the edge of the box, hand on the edge of the box, and then like a dog peeing on a fire hydrant, lift up and over, and again, put that lacrosse ball right on that adductor tendon, adductor attachment, and then start kind of grinding your hips back and forth. In the beginning, it might feel like a steel cord in there, just like super dense and tight. Over time, you'll be able to kind of nestle that lacrosse ball in there a little bit and just massage out that tendon, which just does complete wonders for your hip. So you're here making your pelvic motions, grinding back and forth. You might want to do this in the privacy of your own home. It can look a little awkward. If you don't care about that, do it in the privacy of your public gym. So grind around in there. One other interesting variation of this, if you notice, my leg is away from the midline of my body. It's abducted away from the midline. So that puts the adductor muscles on tension, which makes this a little bit more intense. And depending on you, less or more effective, it kind of depends. But if you want to have it where your leg is more towards the midline of your body, what you can do is scoop your leg underneath here. I've been doing this for years, so I'm making it look a little easier than it probably will be the first time you do it. But the ball is still on my adductor, but now my legs are closer together, and that just feels like a different stimulus. You're here, grinding around. If your arm is getting tired from holding yourself up, you could put a bench or a box or a Swiss ball underneath your body. But this is just getting access to some different areas of my adductors here. Breathe and relax. If you're a super masochist and you have a friend who's willing to put a little pressure on here, for some people who have really, really dense muscles, that can feel intense. Don't worry if that's not you. This is plenty intense for most people. So we're really hammering the adductors here. And when we're done, we slowly come out, move that ball out of the way. You could retest your squat at this point or retest laying on the ground and moving your hip around. But what you'll usually find is you can squat and you can get this much more out like that, which really helps being upright when you front squat or when you overhead squat, when you free up those adductors. And it can actually help your hip internal rotation as well. So moving on, we've worked on the top, working on the groin. Now we're going to work on the hamstrings. The hamstrings can really limit hip flexion in squatting, or if your leg is straight, hip flexion when you're deadlifting. So we're going to get those hamstring attachment points by doing a wide sumo squat, sitting on that ball and pulling your hip into it. So I'm kind of on the inside, and I'm gliding my hip in this direction, pulling into it. And I even like to pull to a place where my foot back here comes off the ground naturally, and all of my body weight is balanced on top of this ball. And then, when I find a really good spot, like right there, what I'm going to do is watch this foot here. I'm going to lift it up, and I'm going to bounce it down into the ball. And that really is really effective on freeing up the medial hamstrings where they blend into the adductors. So bounce into the floor with your foot, towards the floor rather. Grind in and out. Get the attachment points way at the top, sit up tall. Again, there's no wrong way. Just try to find the ugliest, gnarliest, densest spots, because those are the areas that need the most help. Those are the areas that are restricting your range of motion the most and causing you all your problems. So we're working on the hamstrings, and then what we're going to do is complete our journey around the hip and start working on the glutes. So how you do that is laying on your back with your softball, hips go up, turn to the side, softball's under, grind across like that. Or find a good spot and become dead weight, and then scrub a little bit, pause, become dead weight, scrub a little bit. I find that the pausing and fully allowing all your body weight to sink onto the implement that you're using is really, really effective, and it's a missing for a lot of people. A lot of people are a little bit tense and they're kind of doing it and it hurts, but they never drop in a little bit more. So I really would encourage you to relax, sink into the softball, and you'll find that you get access to some deeper layers. So work on these lateral hips, glute medius, glute max, deep hip rotators, all that stuff. Work on that for a good amount of time. The other thing you can do is keep going with smaller and smaller implements. Go to a lacrosse ball. I even have some videos about using the Jack Knobber 2, which is a really pinpoint tool on my YouTube channel. But anything that kind of gets into those lateral hips and kind of softens them up over time is going to help your hip flexion and all of your other hip ranges of motion, and it's going to help your squatting, your deadlifting, and all that stuff. So there's a whole world of other tissue exercises that I could recommend, but I'll just start with those basics and let's move on to the stretches. So a couple basic stretches that you can do are pigeon pose. If you're very, very tight, I would recommend pigeon pose on a box. I'll show you what that looks like. Basically, on any elevated surface, this could be a bed, a chair, a box, see if you can get your shin laid across the edge of it, very close to the edge. Stay very tall. If you stay very tall, it's easier to get into the position. Your foot can be hanging off the edge or it can be on it. The main thing to look out for is we don't want any stress on our knee. If your hip can't rotate, the stress goes to your knee. So no pain or tension here, just a big stretch back here. I like to hold my foot down, and then I like to stick my butt back and slightly lean forward. I actually am pinning down both my knee and my ankle, then I'm sticking my butt back, then I'm leaning forward. Start with just kind of this basic linear progression. As you get comfortable with this, don't be afraid to freestyle around and kind of get into some crazier positions like bringing the arm across and dropping the chest, or in the opposite direction like this and dropping the chest. But in the beginning, this will feel so tight that you won't want to move basically anywhere from here. But with stretching, it's always about the feel. Do I feel just a good, comfortable stretch and no excessive strain? And can I fully relax in this position? I've been doing this for a long time, so I can relax and I'm stretching at the same time. All my weight's on the glutes right now. That would be a pretty advanced thing. So usually you want your hands to be supporting you. So do your pigeon pose, your glute stretch, breathing and relaxing. When you're done with that, let's move on. We'll move on to something that feels similar but is different, which is the band hip capsule mobilization. So this can feel like a glute stretch, and you might be stretching the glutes, but you also might be getting a little bit of the hip capsule, which can really restrict your range of motion. It's whatever's nearest the joint can restrict it the most. So if you get the capsule or the tissues that are nearest the joint freed up and a little looser, you can experience all kinds of gains in your hip range of motion. So what you do, hook a band up right here, step through it, hook it around your hip crease, get something soft underneath your knee here, and get some tension on the band by walking forward. Swing your leg across into external rotation and get all of your weight balanced on your knee here. Get your torso forward very, very far, and then stick your butt out and drop your chest down, maybe even coming to your elbows, and you should feel a deep pressure in the back of the hip. If you feel an impingement on the front, maybe you need to use your hand to push backwards a little bit more, or you need to change your torso angle or hunt around for different positions to where you only are getting just a very deep pressure in the back of the hip. So I've been doing this for several years, so it looks like easy for me to move in and out of these positions because I'm familiar with them, but go very slow when you're doing this for the first time so you can pay attention to what is the sensation you're feeling here. The sensation you're looking for is that deep pressure in the back of the hip. So hunt around a little bit with your leg in external rotation, and you can try it in internal rotation, and it's helpful to have something blocking your leg into internal rotation like this, meaning I'm here, internal rotation of the hip, this blocks it so it stays in that position, and then all the same things still apply. Hunt around, searching for that deep pressure, almost like a deep capsule stretch. Breathe and relax. Another thing we're doing here is we are centrating or centering the hip in the socket, and whenever the hip is centrated in the socket, it has more range of motion and more stability. So both internal and external rotation of the hip with the band is an excellent exercise, as long as there's no impingement feeling. We've worked on all the tissue work. We can use the band for a couple more cool stretches. The band in general helps people feel less impinged in the hip, so we're going to keep using it, even though there's quite a few other stretches you can do. One stretch is a standing hamstring stretch, where you come forward with the pressure, the band's pulling you back, get your back flat, chest up, stick your butt back until you feel a good hamstring stretch. It's nice to have your hands on some object here. And then what you want to do is build tension in your hamstrings by kind of pawing at the ground. So I'm doing this motion without actually moving. So I'm here, take a big breath and hold it, paw at the ground, and then when I release my breath, I let the band pull me back just a little bit. So I take a big breath, paw at the ground, tension, relax. If you notice my back foot, I'm up on my toes, which is a helpful kind of positional cue. My feet are fairly close together. My back is flat, it's not rounded. So back flat, tension, hunt around, get a good stretch, loosen up those hamstrings. And then the final stretch that I'm going to show you is a stretch for the quads, which get tremendously tight and can pull you into an anterior pelvic tilt. Anterior pelvic tilt is bad because the more anteriorly tilted you are, the earlier you'll get hip impingement. And you can test this by doing a squat with a big arch in your back and seeing how quickly you run into your hips versus a more neutral pelvic position where you have more hip clearance. So the quads are one of the muscles responsible for keeping us in that anterior tilt. So we're going to do the wall quad stretch, where you find a wall or a pole, you put your shin up against it, and then you just bring your other hip forward if you can. You might have to lean and kind of wiggle yourself into this position. And then from here, with your ribs down like you're doing a crunch, bring this hip forward to the ground, towards the ground, and hunt around until you get a nice stretch in the middle of your quads. You don't want to feel it too far down by the knee. You don't want to feel it too high up. This is position 1 for the quad stretch. Holding your foot, hand on the ground, hip forward, breathing, relaxing, or tensing your muscles up. Try to tense your quads, and then let them go. Get your brain involved. Wiggle around, find a good stretch. Position 2 is if you can come up a little bit more, stay rib cage down, stay crunched, don't arch your back like this. Stay crunched and see if you can come up to this position, or maybe all the way up into this position. Breathe, floss in and out, wiggle around, just trying to get this to comfortably release. If you feel like you're going to die and your muscles are going to rip, and you might want to back out a little bit, kind of come to an easier position for you. But you should know that you should be able to have your shin against the wall, your hip crease all the way forward, full hip extension, and squeeze your butt back here. And if you have adequate range of motion in your quads, this should not freak your body out. If I squeeze my butt really, really hard, it's no big deal. So that's kind of what you're working towards over time. So those are just a couple of my favorite exercises. I know I threw a lot of information at you there, but I want to kind of give you the ultimate guide to working on that hip impingement. You should know that this is a lifelong journey to have a flexible, pain-free, mobile body. This is an excellent start. Email me if you have any questions. I wish you the best of luck.
That's it, guys. Thank you very much for watching. I will put all of Shane's information down in the description area, link to his Instagram, his YouTube channel. Check him out. Be sure to subscribe. That's it. Until next time, always remember,
Tread on time.